Welcome to the DeFi podcast, where we attempt to imagine the future of crypto, because foresight is what makes great investors. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment. All statements made by hosts or guests are strictly beliefs or point of views and are not recommendations to buy, sell, or hold any security. Hosts or guests may hold certain securities discussed in this podcast.
Welcome to the DeFi podcast. Today we are continuing our conversation with Dylan from Yield Yak. And this week we're going to talk more about products and Yield Yak itself. Welcome to the show, Dylan.
Yeah, thanks for having me back, guys. Appreciate it.
Good to have you on.
So this week we thought that we would talk about all the different products that Yield Yak is working on or has already shipped. And there are quite a few. So I don't know if there's one product in particular you want to start with, maybe the optimizing protocol, which is, I guess, the base. I don't know if you look at it that way.
Yeah, I mean, that's the revenue driver for Yield Yak. So I guess that's where kind of a lot of the focus is on and what I guess where most of the users are as well. So essentially there's two types of farms when you go to Yield Yak, and Yield Yak is most known for its farms. There's auto compounding farms where rewards are compounded on your behalf back into the underlying asset. So if you're farming AVAX and USD and you're earning Joe rewards, those Joe rewards are sold 50% into AVAX, 50% into USD, and re-LP'd into your underlying position. So it's for people that are looking to build a specific position rather than accumulate rewards from different incentivization protocols. And you get the benefits of compound interest as well, because that reinvest mechanic is done on your behalf. So you don't have to pay gas fees. You don't have to log in every day and manage your farms. It's all done it's done for you. So it was a tool built out of need of when you're managing multiple farms, and especially when gas fees are high, there's even bigger benefits. And the higher APR of the farm, the higher the compound interest impact is. You get that snowball impact as rewards accumulate. So that's the main product. There's other types of farms which are single asset folding strategy farms. So an example of this would be like a Benki USDT farm or an AVAX farm, where essentially we're optimizing lending protocols, incentivizing you for for lending out your tokens so that people can borrow against them. And they offer incentives for you to supply this. And what Yield Yak does is it folds your deposit for you. So let's take USDT on Benki as an example. So you'll deposit $100 in USDT. We'll then borrow $50 on your behalf, and then we'll deposit that $50 back into Benki. So now you got $150 exposure. We'll then borrow $25 of that $50, and we loop that up to 13 times so that we maximize your overall exposure with that single deposit. And by proxy, we increase your returns. So I think like on Benki right now, if you just supplied by yourself, you'd earn 5%. But with this optimized mechanic, you're earning over 8%. So you get some benefits there. So those are the main products, I'd say, the compounding farms and the single asset folding strategies.
So would you say that on average, Yield Yak is using this kind of mechanic, you're able to get the best APRs in the market?
So for the most part, yes. I mean, there's the benefits are largest for smaller farmers. The reason that they're the largest for I'm talking about total amount deposited. You benefit the most as a smaller guy, just because you get the benefit of a larger TVL that's compounding. So put it like this: the optimal point to compound is a calculation of the rewards minus the gas fees to compound. And when you're farming on your own as a smaller farmer, that might be once every 4 or 5 days when it's beneficial. But when you deposit into a Yield Yak farm with hundreds of other users, all of a sudden it's reinvesting 3 to 4 times a day rather than once every 3 to 4 days. So I guess to answer your question, most of the time it's beneficial to use Yield Yak or doing it yourself, but it depends in certain instances.
Yeah, I think my main, the thing that I'm most impressed with, it kind of takes a lot of that concern about gas fees, trading slippage, or trading commissions. For a retail trader, like these small things add up over time when you're compounding on, let's say, a daily basis, but much less impact on a very large position.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the other reason I'm a user as well, obviously, one of the reasons I like using Yield Yak is that if you click into any farm, you can see the asset growth over time. So you can see how the farm's been performing. You see the breakdown of where the APY is coming from, like how much is from farming rewards, how much is from swap fees. You can see deposit growth as well. Like are people entering this farm? Are people been exiting? You get a sense of like what am I actually getting involved with, which you don't usually get like on the direct protocol itself. Yeah, Yield Yak offers that, which is another nice perk.
So what was it like building out this product, and what is it like running the day-to-day?
So building it out, I mean, I when it was founded, I was still just a community member, but I was one of the first users of Yield Yak, so I can speak a little bit to the thinking behind the project, and it was really built out of need in terms of all of the founding members and developers. They're DeFi enthusiasts as well, and they were coming over from Ethereum, and Avalanche had just launched. Yield Yak was probably one of the first 5 projects launched on Avalanche, or one of the first few. And as all of these different DEXs were rolling out, back then there was a ton, and it was a bit more wild west than it was now. There was no way to like aggregate that and to understand like what's going on where, what are the best farms, who's doing what. And also, especially back then, the benefits of compound interest were massive because, to bootstrap the ecosystem, there was just huge rewards and huge yields. So it was a huge edge to use an auto compounder, both to see what was happening and to get those benefits. So, I mean, it was chaotic for sure in terms of trying to cover all of those different projects. But, the team's kind of ethos is that, sure, there's a certain level of vetting that we do on the projects to try to, make sure that we're supporting, good projects, but we also just try to cover the ecosystem in an unbiased way. So, we're not trying to like pick winners or pick favorites. The idea is like if there's something on Avalanche that DeFi users would want to see, it should be on Yield Yak. And that's kind of been the methodology that's driven the other products as well, which I think we'll get into. It's been very much like, how can we be kind of a one-stop DeFi shop to do everything you want to do in Avalanche when it comes to chasing yield and swapping and everything that comes with it.
It's definitely impressive that you have so many products. Like when you just look at the page and you can like sort through it and you can find almost like a Yield Yak farm for anything on Avalanche.
Yeah, I mean that's just a credit to the devs that they're super passionate. They're yield farmers themselves, so they're constantly looking at what's rolling out, and oftentimes like they've rolled out a farm that I wasn't even aware of. It's not like a situation where the devs are just like working to like a roadmap that someone sets out for them. They're users themselves, and they're like they have their finger to the pulse, so that makes it easy. We don't have a roadmap. We're super reactive to what's going on in the ecosystem. We have some fixed projects that we ourselves are working on. It's basically split into 2 parts. There's the reactive part, which probably accounts for 75% of the time spent. Then the other time spent is building out, like I would say, our product. So the things that we're working on, like that would be something like liquid staking. That would be something like Yak Swap, the DEX aggregator, making improvements to that. So projects that we know we want to do and that we can do like isolated from what any other project is doing. So that makes up, a chunk of our time as well.
Super interesting. How would you define the competitive landscape, and where do you see the market for yield optimizers going?
It's a good question. I mean, it's a really competitive landscape. I guess more on the cross-chain front. I think there's always going to be a space for these strategies, and especially because liquidity is being fragmented and like continues to be fragmented. So like if I was just kind of a DeFi user and I was just kind of just loyal to Trader Joe or just loyal to Pangolin, you're missing out on so much in the ecosystem by not like exposing yourself to like an aggregator like Yield Yak, which is going to take kind of an unbiased approach and just here's everything that's available on that chain. So, obviously our future is heavily yield dependent, and, lots of talk about real yield and sustainable yield. And, hard to predict the future in terms of kind of what the yield landscape is going to look like on Avalanche or any other chain. But assuming you're bullish on DeFi, the value of a Yield Yak, I think, will only become bigger as the ecosystem becomes more mature and there's more projects. We try to kind of leverage the fact that Yield Yak's been around for well over a year. We've never had an exploit. We've never lost user funds. It's a truly kind of community focused project that's trying to kind of do things in the right way and do right by the users, and hopefully that leads to some brand loyalty and trust going forward.
So can we talk about yield boosting for a bit? I know that you guys are getting in on the Platypus Wars.
Yeah, so Avalanche basically has their own kind of version of the Curve Wars or the Convex Wars, where essentially platforms build on top of the underlying protocol and the underlying tokenomics to try to offer boosted yields to their users. So to take it back, basically how that works is these kind of VE tokenomics are essentially, if you stake their token and hold that token staked, you're constantly accumulating VE XYZ, and your VE XYZ balance has a direct impact on the yields you're earning in those protocols farms, for providing liquidity in those protocols. So if I have a huge VE-PTP balance, my yield supplying USDC to Platypus are larger than if I didn't. Now, what's happened is that some protocols have been whitelisted to essentially accumulate that on the behalf of their users by black holing their tokens, so black holing PTP, black holing Joe, and so forth, and letting users black hole that token into their vault on their behalf, and they'll receive a derivative token. YY Joe, Vector has their equivalent. Stake Hut's another example for Trader Joe. And giving a derivative token, which then they can stake to earn a percentage of the fees earned by those farms on Yield Yak. And it ends up being something of a win-win situation, or it should hopefully be, where the user is able to earn revenue on the Yield Yak farms. Yield Yak and all of its farmers benefit from having a larger staked Joe balance or Platypus balance. And thus it becomes more profitable to farm on Yield Yak versus farming on your own. So there's, we call it kind of the PTP party and Trader the Joe Wars. So yeah, Yield Yak does that. We have that with YY Joe. We have that with YYPTP. That's the Yield Yak equivalent derivative token for black holing those tokens with us. And there's more to come. Maybe a bit of alpha. We're going to be doing the same for Moremoney. I think that's almost ready to go. Just waiting for Moremoney to whitelist us, and we're working with Yeti as well to do the same with them. Again, it's us kind of reacting to the ecosystem and trying to add value for the users so that they don't have to do it themselves. Yield Yak does it for them.
Nice.
Yeah, the PTP wars are an interesting topic. We actually had an episode with Canuck Link a little while ago, which maybe we can link at this moment in the podcast, and we explored where the value should accrue. Will the value accrue to Platypus, or will it actually accrue to these platforms building on top of Platypus? So interesting episode if you're wondering about that. Maybe we can jump into the Yak Swap, which is your DEX aggregator, which we recommend to our users quite a bit. There's not a lot of awareness that this exists, but it's actually a great tool.
Yeah, so I mean, this one I think I can kind of really encourage people to use it in an unbiased way. Yield Yak doesn't take any fees. We don't earn any revenue on top of its open source on-chain tool that we really recommend people to use because it will save them money. And so I guess just to make sure that everyone kind of understands, what it is, what is a DEX aggregator, there's competing versions. But the reason that I would recommend Yak Swap is just the number of route integrations across the Avalanche ecosystem. It has every route that I'm aware of that can possibly be integrated. It has to have on-chain decision-making. It has pretty much all the ecosystem tokens. So it's especially useful if you're looking to swap maybe a smaller market cap token that isn't going to be supported on some of the other DEX aggregators. It's great for that. And what it does is that it looks for the best route to execute your trade, and that can include multiple hops, as we call it. So let's say you're swapping from Platypus to USDC. So you're collecting your Platypus rewards and you want to put them into USDC. Yak Swap will look across all of the routes possible, and very likely it will, swap that Platypus into AVAX on Trader Joe, and then swap that AVAX into USDC on Woo Finance or GMX, or the protocols that have the best rates for big major pairs. And by proxy, you actually save a lot. So it makes a big difference than if you were just go to I guess a normal AMM to make that trade. It's invaluable. I use it every day. I couldn't recommend it more.
Are there any plans to eventually collect fees on it, or do you plan on keeping it free forever?
Something we've discussed a lot with the community. Obviously, everyone would love to start adding fees and increasing revenue, especially in times like these. The feeling is it's a really competitive space. If we start adding fees, all of a sudden, maybe it's not the best place to swap on Avalanche. And, we're still early. I think a lot of projects make the mistake of trying to be too focused on revenue too early in the project at the expense of building out your user base and building adoption. It's a lot easier to add fees later when those fees are going to have a real meaningful impact than add them now to, realistically volume isn't massive. So if we added fees, it's not like it's going to quadruple the protocol's value. So it still would feel too short-sighted to add fees, but it's definitely something that's been discussed with the community. There's various opinions, but for now, the feeling is that, it's more important to build users and increase its usage than worry about, taking fees on it.
Could you see protocols adopting this as a tool? For example, another yield boosting or optimizing protocol that needs to make multiple trades. Would this actually provide a pretty good optimization for protocols that are doing that sort of recycling function?
Potentially, yeah. I mean, and it's the Yak Swap is it's open source. You can see it all and build on top of it. And there are projects that are integrating it into their logic and using it on Avalanche. We're in discussions with a few actually that are using it. And they've had high praise for the code and the ease of integration. So in short, yes. I don't know if there's any other yield boosting protocols that are using it. I don't think so, but they could.
I'm curious, from a technical standpoint, how hard was it to put this together and to just maintain it with all the new listings and changes and so on?
Yeah, so we have a specific developer that specializes in the DEX aggregator and in Yak Swap. And I think it's a very kind of specific skill set to build this and to add the routes. And, he's been really, really quick adding new routes. And, we were the first to integrate GMX and Woo Finance. They're the two biggest. And them and those two and Platypus are the three biggest for volume on Avalanche. And the bigger DEX aggregators, PairSwap and 1inch, they didn't have them integrated for months. Kudos to him. It's quite a technical thing. I think it was kind of built again, kind of out of necessity. They were looking at our arbitrage opportunities, if I'm routing X through here and then moving Y over there, and it eventually evolved into an incredible swap tool that kind of does the arbitrage for you. I mean, I remember when the market was a bit less efficient, you could just go on Yak Swap with $100 in USDT and turn it into $110 in USDT, just routing it through a few different other stables back to USDT. Just because, there's not enough kind of arbitrage bots taking advantage of the ecosystem. But those edges have been hammered out, taken away. But still, it's a kind of a tool that was kind of built on top of that.
Great. Can we talk about liquid staking and YYAvax?
Sure, would love to.
Maybe we could just quickly overview the idea of liquid staking and the Yield Yak solution to it.
Sure. Yeah. So YYAvax is a liquid staking derivative token. So it's a derivative token of AVAX. And, put simply, basically right now, if you're not staking your AVAX on the validator P chain, the chain where the network is validated, where people stake their tokens to have the right to validate the network, you need 2,000 AVAX to spin up a validator. If you're not doing that, you're missing out on yield that is awarded by the Avalanche network for doing so, and that yield ranges from anywhere from 7 all the way up to 10% if you were to lock it up for over a year. So if you're just using our AVAX on the Avalanche C chain and using it in DeFi, you're not able to do that. And what YYAvax tries to do is to bridge that gap so that you can still use your AVAX in DeFi protocols on the Avalanche C chain, but also still get the benefits of the yield being awarded to the AVAX staked on the network. So how that works is that users essentially mint YYAvax for AVAX. So they give us their AVAX, we take that across to the P chain, we assign that to our network of validators, it's earning yield, and then we give you a derivative token, YYAvax, in exchange, and then you can take that YYAvax and you can use it in the ecosystem with DeFi utility that's being built out as we speak. Now, the approach that Yield Yak's taken to YYAvax, that's a bit different than other liquid staking tokens. One, it's meant to be easy in and easy out. So, usually right now, if you had your AVAX staked on the P chain and you wanted to get it back, you would have to wait at least 14 days because 14 days is the minimum staking period. You have to wait at least 14 days, make a request, get it back, and then you can move it over and do something with it. Because we're spreading our AVAX across many validators that are constantly unlocking every day, every couple days, we're able to let you enter and exit quickly. It's done with a special withdrawal pool, which always has a certain percentage of the total supply available to be exchanged. But basically, if you use Yak Swap to buy or sell YYAvax, you'll always get the best price, and you won't have to wait those 15 days to get your AVAX back if you want to redeem your YYAvax for AVAX. The other kind of novel approach that we're taking is that with YYAvax, you're actually earning more rewards than just what's being awarded to validators on the P chain. Now, there's another big piece of this, which is just hopefully kind of coming to fruition, which is validating subnets. So that's another huge piece of the big picture for Avalanche is that these validators are going to be validating subnets, and the subnet can choose their different validators with different criteria, and the validators will be rewarded for it. And the vision for YYAvax is that Eden will be pursuing subnets to validate. They're talking to a bunch of other projects that are spinning up subnets in the hopes to validate and earn rewards. And again, those rewards will be distributed to YYAvax holders. So you basically, every benefit that you could have by running a validator, you get it for just holding YYAvax. Another huge perk, which probably isn't spoken about a lot, last week there was a bug detected on the P chain and it required 5 different client releases. So if you're running a node yourself, you had to run 5 different client updates. It was hours and hours of work to navigate this and manage this. Huge downtime for a lot of validators, and the Eden Network did this for you on your behalf. They maintain 90% uptime because they're professionals at running this stuff. As a YYAvax holder, the yield was still flowing. So yeah, it's a really, we think it's a really strong kind of liquid staking setup infrastructure. We're just kind of getting going now.
What would you say are your best performing products? And maybe which ones are you surprised about how well they've performed?
Yeah, so the best performing products on Yield Yak have definitely been our single asset folding strategies, just because that's not an easy thing for you to manage yourself. It's low risk. We manage the supply, the folding mechanics. So how much we're leveraging that single asset. You can't get liquidated, but there's still an element of leverage there. So if the borrow APY got too negative, it could be a negative APY farm. So the dev team are managing that to optimize it for you. There's a lot of work involved in that, and those are our most popular strategies because it offers something that's really hard to get yourself. Yeah,
before we end, I would just say that I've noticed myself watching Yield Yak, kind of developing from the beginning. There's not a lot of sort of retail friendly products out in the market, right? A lot of things are really geared towards big positions or huge liquidity, and I think it's really nice to see Yield Yak kind of offer products that really cater to retail investors or traders and people who want to get in, maybe with a couple small positions, right? And just watch them grow from there.
Yeah, the majority of our users are retail users with smaller positions. It's not really, it's not just whales using Yield Yak. So that's great to hear. It's great feedback. So
yeah, it's really great to dive in and look at each type of product that Yield Yak has created. At Moremoney, we work with Yield Yak quite a bit, and it's been one of our favorite partners to work with. Even for me, being pretty familiar with Yield Yak, it's fun to sort of do this deep dive. So thank you.
It was a pleasure. Thanks for having me on, guys.
If you're still watching at this point, leave us a like, maybe comment about it. Tell us what your favorite Yield Yak product is. Thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Cheers. Thank you, Dylan.
Thanks, guys.